Hello, my wonderful audience. Welcome back. I was on just a little while ago with creationist and cryptozoologist Dave Wotzel, and now I'm on with a cast of science people. And so this will be our science talk. The way that this works is each person is going to tell a story about science. The story could be a theory that they like or experiences that they've had with other people or what have you. I've left it pretty vague, intentionally or otherwise. So who wants to go first?
Nobody pulled
I'm
straws,
shy.
Jackson.
Oh, ladies first. Ladies first.
No, I'm the only lady. That's not fair.
Okay, then because nobody can ever accuse me of not butting in. One of the things that certainly jump-started my interest was when I encountered David Norman's dinosaur encyclopedia. This was way back in the 1980s, and it suddenly jump-started my interest in dinosaurs that had estivated for decades as a kid. And suddenly you could see explainer going into enormous detail. And even though there's been 30 years of research since then, so that superseded some of the material in it, it's still an imaginative tour de force. It's a wonderful insight into the scientific process of how paleontologists do their work, tales of fossils, how they connect up every little shred of it. Whoop, my imagination was just inflamed from that point on.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like it. We've got dinosaur toys over here now.
He's got dinosaurs, not the looks like a stegosaur and a not to scale Camarasaurus maybe.
Oh, nobody told me.
Oh wow, shiny.
Yeah,
I don't think I have any with
Christmas
me.
ornament. My dinosaur.
Oh, that's a Christmas ornament. Oh, bravo.
So, yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, that's
Brachiosaur. He's got some sort of hadrosaur behind it in red.
Actually, what they are is cheap Chinese
dinosaur.
plastic toys.
It reminds me of a Wash from Firefly. He had all the little dinosaurs on his board. That's
Yeah, that was another thing about
that was a series that was ended too soon.
in right around the same
Firefly.
time as David Norman's dinosaur encyclopedia. The British Museum came out with their scale model set, which are still available, and that literally was the first time anybody had thought to do dinosaurs to scale. So suddenly you could see how physically large a Tyrannosaur was compared to an Apatosaurus or Diplodocus. And it was like having a zoo. It was and all the scale model mania since then pretty much started with that British Museum series.
Well, is it the British Museum or is it the Natural History Museum in London? Because the Natural History Museum is the dinosaur museum.
It's London Museum of Natural History, I think it's called now. And then the Carnegie has done a series of stuff there around, and the very short-lived Boston Museum series, that's the one that's got the rearing sauropod example that's so spectacular. They only did a small series, and then there are a bunch of them. I was talking with Jackson, in fact, earlier about this, that now that so many of the animals are out, now some of the minor league put out that you can't do to scale. You can't do a Psittacosaurus on 140. It's going to be the size of your fingernail. So they have to go to an alternate thing. The dinosaur taxa that exist are represented by models some way or other. And so you can have your own zoo much better than the Ark encounter.
Yes, I actually bought the
Silence.
Norman book. I bought the Norman book when my kids were little bitty tiny tots, and that was their big children's book. It was going through that. It's
an actual kids book too that was also very good. And
no,
it
my
showed
kids.
how
My
you
kids are
could
too
do
smart for
perfectly
that.
accurate science.
We had to go for the adult book. It's okay.
Oh yeah, I actually
Yeah.
have a one of those illustrated encyclopedias. Is the first one I ever got. I actually got from my stepmother. That not only has dinosaurs in it, but it also has synapsid, or pre-Mesozoic synapsids and amphibians and diapsids, and then it has mammals from the Cenozoic, because I'd never seen a book other than like a big geology textbook that had like mammals from the Cenozoic, and so that was awesome. That's one of my favorite books that I have.
Yeah. You suddenly have this door opened up where you go, wow, look at all the stuff that used to exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether creation is paying any attention to it.
So, who wants to go next? Who's next on the chopping block?
And silence fell.
Come on, kids.
It's like this is like one of my classes.
When I was a kid,
chopping block. That doesn't sound good.
when I was a kid, I had gone through a warehouse that my granddad had owned, and he had a set of like 1961 encyclopedias, and not just the encyclopedia, but he had these they were like blue encyclopedias, and they're called Space and Science or something. And this was back in the real early 80s, so I must have been about 11 or so. And I had read every single one of them, and I was like, and I knew that the technology had changed so much, even though it was like 81 and it was 20 years out of date. But it was fascinating to read about what they were predicting to be that didn't ever transpire, what they thought would be the moon landing and other things. And I think that really kind of kicked me into gear as far as my interest in science, because I was like, wow, there's just like so many different disciplines of science, and they're all extremely interesting. And so that to me, I think, was one of the first times I said, yeah, you know what, science is my jam. And Star Wars.
Just as a
finding
question,
of the old book, that brought to mind when I was very small, finding a book in my father's bookshelf entitled Planet X. It was a small book, but it was called Planet X. I'm sure you know what that was referring to. It was the prediction of the discovery of Pluto for real.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's cool.
How many were influenced by the old Walt Disney science-based stuff that was back in the 50s? Obviously, if you're too young for that, you wouldn't know about that. But for us old farts, that was another enormous influence. That you saw the future. You saw Werner von Braun's ships to go to the Mars and Moon and all of that.
Oh yeah.
And the Disney people were really big science boosters.
I was much too young. I missed.
I mean, I know, having been to Disney World since I was really, really little, one of the coolest things about Epcot is that they always try to update according to current scientific findings. And so they revamp as much as they can. So you could go into like this technological aspect. So I've kind of been privileged in the fact that I could see that ever since I was like barely walking up to an adult, to see the transition,
the progression of the science.
Progression of science at a theme park. And I was just like, this is the best thing ever. And plus, they had the whole section at Disney World of all the different countries and stuff like that. So not only did you get like a cultural experience, you got a whole bunch of science experience on top of that. I went when they had Captain EO. Do you guys even know what Captain EO was?
Oh yeah, that was back then. That dates back, I think, about the 80s or 90s.
Yep. Yeah, something like Michael Jackson. It was like a 3D. It was like when they were trying to do like the multi-dimensional theater type of experience.
They had a partnership with Kodak. Kodak had developed it that they were pushing.
Yes, and so it was sponsored by Kodak.
Tomorrow, no, you got a people mover.
Yeah,
that was all of LA.
They were pioneers in that area. And remember Ward Kimball, who did the dinosaur evolution stuff in Rite of Spring for Fantasia. He was just a super science groupie.
Well, the Exxon ride that was in Epcot, they still have that. And so they talk a lot about fossil fuels. And the whole reason to ride that is for the dinosaurs at the end. It was like for the dinosaurs at the end, but it smelled terrible. It always smelled bad on that ride. I am in a swamp and it stinks. So it's almost like some kind of weird nostalgic thing. Like, does it still stink? Yes, it does. I'm in my childhood again.
That was the Ford exhibit at the New York World's Fair. Disney built a huge amount of pavilions and stuff. Small World and all of that was built, and the visit with Mr. Lincoln. That was the Illinois thing. So they moved a lot of the rides they built for the New York World's Fair to Disneyland, Disney World, Epcot, and all the rest over the years. And that one at the Exxon thing was the Ford Pavilion.
Yeah, they're still in Disneyland in California. I just saw them a week ago.
A superstar that snuck in the back door.
Oh, I think Bill Ludlow has showed up.
Yes, indeed.
Is that Bill on the end?
Well, hello, Bill. Hello.
you were
Echo.
singing your
Rumble.
praises earlier, Bill, before the show began.
There
Hello,
he is.
hello.
There he is.
I had to
look
go
at
throw
you
a towel over part of my door so the light wouldn't get so bad. So,
Here's my buddy.
Hi,
Look at
Bill.
you. We're twins, baby. We're twins.
So,
Just
Bill,
like you.
the idea for this talk is each person tells a story about something they love in science, whether an experience they've had or a theory that they love, or something like that. So, we haven't heard from most of the cast yet.
yeah, well, let them
It always
go.
goes
They're
silent.
shy.
Let me think
It
about
always
it.
goes silent. All right, so
Well, how about we
PZ?
put Bill on
No.
the spot here? Have him talk about his rise to stardom with his debates.
Oh gosh.
Okay, yeah, you can talk about that. That's fine.
I'm being stalked now, so it's
You
really
are.
crazy. I got one guy that's made 30 videos now. It's up to 30 as of yesterday.
Holy crap!
30 videos about me in the last 30 days. So evidently he's
Wow.
spending all of his
Is it
time
Wednesday?
doing it. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to give his channel any publicity. He has 11 subscribers right now, so
Oh, good lord!
Wow.
I kind of want to
I
keep
think
it down there.
Dead Chipmunks have more subscribers than that.
You got to tell him. You
Yeah.
got to tell him to make his videos about Scarlett Johansson or something rather than you. And
Right.
they don't get more subscribers.
There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Beyonce.
Uh,
Yeah.
have a
But no, it's
lawsuit?
been real interesting. It's been a real interesting year. I'm just looking forward to this year. I'm doubling my time at the museum. I'm going to be spending 2 to 3 days a week down there. Sorry, my voice right now. I'm just getting over this cold that everybody's got, and I've been coughing. So, but yeah, I literally reached thousands of kids last year. This year, what we do is we get an email at the beginning of the week that tells us when the scheduled field trips are. So I can literally go down there for 2 to 3 hours and hit 100 to 200 children that way. I don't have to be there all day. I
I
can
think
go
it's
at
called
peak
child
times.
abuse. You're not supposed
So-
to hit children.
I was about to say you're hitting
You are
100
right.
kids.
I'll
And
hit those
you
kids.
don't have to be
Punch,
there.
punch,
Have you got
punch.
like remote
Yeah.
punching?
Passion.
You're going to say Bill Ludlow assaults children.
With knowledge.
Yep. Hitting them with skulls. Yep. So, but that's exciting. So I got a lot of things coming up this year. With still with the tracks that I found a couple of years ago. So we got a couple papers that are going to be published in May at the GSA meeting in Flagstaff. So,
I was just there actually.
yeah.
I was just in
In
Flagstaff.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yep. But as far as stuff from this last year, gosh, yeah, I mean, as far as the debate went, it certainly made a difference in, I guess, how do I say it? I gained a lot of subscribers. I gained a lot of fans, actually. I mean, there's people that write me now and stuff. And,
It puts you on the map.
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I think
And I really appreciate Steve for putting that together. I tried for, over a year to get Hovind to do it. And, I just got excuses. Well, you're not a college professor or, that kind of stuff. So,
And he spanked him.
That
Cleaned
makes me
his
so
cloth.
mad. That makes me
Yeah.
so mad because when you look at just a lot of the history of science, especially at the Natural History Museum in London, one of the collectors was just a curious woman who went and found the majority of the fossils. You don't have to be a professor necessarily to know things or enjoy things or be involved in science. That's not required. And if you put the time into it, even actively digging, and if it's not a technical degree, but if you stay in the know, you can be well read, you can interact with professors, you can still gain an education without
Right.
having that title and still be, well versed and have a vast amount of knowledge. I think that's grossly unfair for people to say things like that.
What's also
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone with courage is
I'm
going to talk.
nobody.
but-
He gave me time, but I'm just a student, so oh well.
Yeah.
But
What were you
why-
going to say, Peasy? Peasy was going to say something.
I was going to discourage you from this kind of disparagement of college professors. No, it's,
I like most
I agree with you 100% that there's a sense of entitlement that comes with the title sometime, and it
Yeah.
should not be. that, you know, as science communicators, we want everybody out there to be participating in this.
Absolutely. There's a cool thing. And I don't know if Bill knows about this or not. And I actually got to tour the Francis Crick Institute in London with a man named Martin Jones. Absolutely amazing experience. They have a science outreach program where that they call the Citizen Scientist program, where they desperately need individuals to help them, you know, differentiate between circles in their SEM pictures, which one is a nucleus and which one is a circle, because they don't have a computer program that can do that. And so they've developed this technology, including electron microscopy, along with fluorescence. They overcame the fluorescence issue of losing it while, you know, you're blasting it with electrons. And so they've built this electron microscope that can slice off layers of cells. And what they're trying to do is get a 3D image of a nucleus. And so they're taking pictures one slice at a time within HeLa cells, those are cancer cells, and they're generating 3D images from all of those pictures compiled. So they literally need people just to trace out the images of the nucleus. And there's thousands of pictures per one cell. And so teachers are using this in their classroom because the humans are better than computers at processing. Okay, we know that this is the nucleus and not this circle over here. This one is. And so you don't need a PhD to trace a nucleus. And so there are people that are involved in this program that are able to contribute to real cutting edge science. And they recently, I think at the Natural History Museum, had on display the first 3D printed image of a nucleus from a HeLa cell based on all of these citizen scientists going through it and putting the time in so they could focus their work on getting this done. And it's fascinating and wonderful. So it's just, we need more people involved like that.
Well, and one thing that
right here, where you've got people from all over the planet known each other until coming together by this means, and we're able to exchange information back and forth. And then think about as an impoverished scholar, I got to say how spectacularly accessible the vast majority of technical literature is today compared to even 10 or 15 years ago. And that means there's no excuse to read the products of all those brilliant scientists directly. It's not like some temple that you have to go to. No, this is a golden age of science.
Indeed.
So, speaking of Donald, PZ, you guys want to go with your stories? I know you guys have some stories.
You guys hear me okay?
Hey, Donald,
Yes,
can I
sir.
just ask you one thing? I've heard your last name pronounced 4 different ways.
It's
Can you give us-
Prothero.
Okay, Prothero. Okay, that's
Prothero,
what I
the
wanted
Welsh
to know.
name.
Thanks. Yep.
PZ, you want to go or should I?
Go ahead.
I was trying to think. I have a lot of stories. I'm one of those kids who got hooked on dinosaurs at age 4 and never grew up. That's back in the 1950s when there wasn't anything around like there is today. You know, no Jurassic World, no toys, or hardly any at that point. Just a handful of dinosaur books. By the time I was in high school, I had probably the best kid dinosaur book collection there was because there weren't many to be had. Nowadays, of course, there are thousands of titles. And I was sort of funny in a lot of ways because I never had any doubts I was going to do. I was going to be a paleontologist since I knew what the word meant. And the interesting thing about that is also that it was tough in those days even to find out what it took to get in and to find a way to do it. It was very, very much a thing where there's nobody you could talk to. I ended up writing old-fashioned letters to curators and museums and actually got 2 or 3 page responses from them telling me how to go about getting into graduate school and all the rest. I doubt very many people would find happens anymore. But I think maybe what I'll tell is another story. When I made graduate career, I came to the American Museum of Natural History and Columbia University, where I got all my graduate degrees. And I came at a time, it was a very interesting time in the late 1970s at the American Museum when they were the cutting edge of a lot of ideas in science, especially in biology. This is when cladistics was now becoming widespread in a lot of areas, but the American Museum was pretty much where it started here in the United States, at least in certain disciplines. Ideas in biogeography were becoming very popular. At the same time, they were openly embracing a lot of the sort of untraditional ideas like neutralism and so on that were not as widely spread among biologists at that time as they are now. I remember reading in my undergrad biology textbook in evolution and realizing how much things had already changed by the time I was in graduate school. And the experience was interesting for me was in all those years in college, I was always doing what undergrads are supposed to do and doing what the professor told me to do. But in grad school, at least that program, they didn't care about letter grades. All you did do was pass your grad courses. And so it gave me a freedom to really just do what I felt like was important. And I ended up signing for an evolution course with two hardcore Walter Bach and Tony Warburton, hardcore old-fashioned style neo-Darwinists. And I used the opportunity, instead of just parroting what they told me back, to actually start working independently of them and trying to be a foil against a lot of their arguments, because they were sort of old-fashioned. And I was hearing all the new cutting-edge stuff in the American Museum. So myself and John Flynn, who was a student with me at the time, and now, of course, is at the American Museum permanently, and a couple of other grad students, we pretty much gave them a real hard time for the entire semester, because we kept raising all these issues that were current evolutionary biology, but they refused to acknowledge even exist, let alone discuss. So it gave me a good experience in actually arguing and discussing things professionally in a way I would not have if I had just been an obedient student. So that's my little memory.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
How do you like the term neo-Darwinist? Because like I don't particularly like that term for myself. I don't say I'm a neo-Darwinist. I don't say that I'm a Darwinist.
Well, it has a historic. It has an historic root, right? It was the addition of population genetics and a lot of other techniques to conventional Darwinism and selection starting in the late 1930s and 40s. And so it has that is a definable part of history of biology. And then the question is, well, how do you define what's happening now? There's so many different ideas out there, and there's so much in the way of different camps of people who emphasize one idea over another that it's hard to define what evolutionary biology is anymore. They're have very, very diverse range of ideas. They're not nearly as unanimous as they were, say, in the centennial of Darwin's book in 1959.
So it's quite a way for each person to determine if they want to take that label or not, depending if they mean more of a colloquial meaning of it or the more antiquated meaning of it.
Right. Well, normally it's used in context that scientists will refer to Downardism. It refers to the ideas that were prevalent starting in the late 40s, especially in the 50s, not necessarily modern biology by any means.
So did you identify
all that set that we're integrating the new genetics of the 1930s. Right. But what's so fascinating, and Don is right, was this sea change, this fabulous revolution that was taking place in the 70s and 80s. And that, of course, was pre-homeobox genes. So then you kick in yet more as you start developing yet more information that the field keeps moving way, way, way ahead because there's so much information being pulled in.
Yeah, that's what science is supposed to do, of course. And we're still trapped with people who still think about it the way they were 50 years ago. So,
oh God, yes. When people talk to me on my Twitter account and they're like, here's a paper from 50 years ago, or here's a paper from 70 years ago or 20 years ago, unless it's regularly cited in a textbook, it's something phenomenal that's still seen as, current science. I'm like, this had
stuff in the 19th century. I mean, it's like,
it's like, gosh. So it fascinates me that people don't understand that science changes, and it's okay that it changes.
History has done the same thing. When I was a history major in school, and I was a history major in college, that's what I had my BA in. And when I came out of high school, a very superb group of history teachers under my belt, suddenly you're in college and you're catching up with the historiography of the 1970s. And whoa, you realize how far behind those textbooks were that you were drawing on, where they were basically filtering stuff from 15, 20, 30 years ago. So the fields occur in the same context in everybody else, that when you get into the cutting edge, you realize how far behind the curve you were when you didn't know there was a curve you were behind.
Yes. I learned quite a bit in my history class, especially about Christopher Columbus and all the stuff he was involved in. So you're like, wow, yeah, they didn't tell me that in high school. Nope. Wow, here's all these letters and here's these diaries. Oh my God, yeah, there's a lot here.
For us, yeah, that was more like they wouldn't tell us that kind of stuff in middle and elementary school, and then we get into high school and we were more, I guess, culturally conscious, whatever, and they would start saying, "Oh yeah, he wasn't a great guy."
I never heard that until I got to college.
Is wrong.
There was Civil War.
There was an Adam
that was just a hot potato. In the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate because my sister's the historian in the family, and my brother's like the journalist. So I have like a journalist brother, a historian sister, and I'm the scientist. So my mom, between the three of us, will call us.
Well, hey, we all need to be here and integrate all of those fields, because you get to be a much more rounded person when you're having both the history and the science and the arts, and you pull in everything from every discipline to give you insights about things. And then the science communicators have to play that role, because they're finding ways of acting as an avenue, because not everybody just necessarily is good at explaining it to stuff. Alan Alda has just been spectacular in that, to try to find a bridge between the disciplines.
You know what I would really love, and this would just be a dream of mine, if I had Samuel L. Jackson talk about like chemistry. just have him in a classroom. Just let me film him. Samuel L. Jackson explains the ideal gas law.
Oh my God.
There would be so many swear words in it, but it'd be
I would have gone
absolutely
more
brilliant.
This is all personal choice, right?
I love Samuel L. Jackson. Sometimes I hear things in my head. But
do what?
This is pressure.
Well, did you see?
This is
Brian
pressure.
Cox just did a hilarious thing. Okay.
It
No.
would be great,
I mean,
though.
just-
I
I'm
mean, if
just
you
gonna
like was explaining, the relationship between pressure and volume, and just like, and then swear words in there,
Brian
and
Cox
just you're like,
was doing a new thing on the Big Bang cosmology with the Monty Python set.
oh,
And the whole thing, they were explaining the whole history of the universe. They just showed it on PBS just a couple of weeks ago, and that's a perfectly fine example of it. I'm an old James Burke groupie, for those of you who remember Connections. The idea that anything that can be understood can be explained, and it's the job of the science educator to explain it. Otherwise, you don't understand it. So you find ways of communicating whatever tools you need, whatever media you need to make use of. You want to pull all of that together with the goal that people will come away from it understanding it clearly, and yet never dumbing anything down.
Yeah. I really, I just truly wish I could get my hands on Samuel L. Jackson and do like little 5-minute videos. Samuel L. Jackson explains genetics.
That actually reminds me of Steve.
Mitosis.
Are you guys tentatively getting Tyson?
Emperor Atheist had arranged for Neil deGrasse Tyson to come on because they had something going back a couple years that he said he'd be on. However, something came up. They're trying to reschedule, so we are trying to figure that out. But that won't be on my channel. That'll be on Emperor Atheist channel. But yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm look forward to that.
Yeah, that would be cool. He seems like a really nice guy.
He does.
I
like his story about Carl Sagan and his interactions with Carl Sagan. It's just lovely.
Catching his Star Talk series, either the radio or TV?
No, I don't think so. Not really.
Amazingly, it's on Fox and National Geographic Channel, and so it pops up in various contexts. And he's had everybody from James Cameron and Stephen Colbert and astrophysicists and biologists and geneticists and ethnologists, and he'll do video interviews and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, catch that show if you can.
Okay.
Hey, Donald, did you see where Neil Shubin is going to be in Los Angeles next month on the 15th, February 15th?
Well, that'd be cool.
He's doing at one of the universities. I can send you the link. He's doing a free actually, it's a little more specific. It's actually on the transition from fins to limbs kind of thing.
Right.
Which is like his field. What a pivotal amount of work he's done. Jennifer Clack and all the rest. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Neil's a classmate of mine. Neil and I go back to American Museum in Columbia. He was an undergrad and I was a graduate student about the same time. And one of his first ever research papers was done with me, where he worked on all extant horses in the Badlands of South Dakota. If you look at his CV, one of his first publications is co-authored with me, project I was doing, and then I got him involved in. So
that's why I was asking. I was wondering if maybe you were going to be there. So
I will have to have my calendars. I got to tell you, say hi to him when he comes into town.
Yeah, it's on a Thursday.
Also.
I know it's on a Thursday evening at like 6 or 7 p.m. So
yeah, I'll check my calendar.
What a strange time.
I'll have to just see what the calendar says.
Yeah, I'll send you the link because if I may end up making a drive there myself. So
No,
Shubin, excellent. His work, the video series that was done on his book is marvelous on PBS. He's a perfect example of that cutting edge Evo Devo, where you're gathering together the genetics, the paleontology, the developmental biology, interdisciplinary, because that's the only way you can make sense of the data.
Steve, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say that if anybody has not read Your Inner Fish, it's one of the best books out there.
It is a great book.
It is an incredibly good book, to say the least. So it's like a must read if anybody has not read Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin.
Yeah, and the video series, if anything, was even better because they focused in.
I got Improbable Planet down here that I was just
beautiful graphics on it, so it was like the updated visual edition of it. They make great companions, and they got the reptile mammal transition in. Yay!
The Universe Within is another good one from him too. His more recent one, The Universe Within.
I got to read The Cosmic Landscape.
Oh yes, that's an excellent book too. He goes into the big picture and everything in terms of geology and the role of various elements in various contexts. It's very impressive.
Oh, there you go.
Are we comparing books now? I have one for each hand.
Are we comparing book size? Because I'm going to lose.
This is one here.
Mine's larger.
This inspired me. This is one of Donald's books right here about the creation evolution controversy. Right here, reality check. So
yeah.
I'm
about to start on this one called. You guys know about Ben Goldacre? He had a book called Bad Science, and so this is one that a friend of mine gave me on my last trip to London. It's called Irrationality by Stuart Sutherland, forward by Ben Goldacre, and afterward by James Ball. So it talks a lot about irrationality and that type of thinking in the modern society. And then, but one of my favorites though is this one. If you've not read it,
I'm an expert.
Oh, it's classic.
I only have this one because I was looking at it again the other day.
I'm actually reading right now. The book that I'm reading is titled "Understanding Human Evolution." I think it's the 5th edition. I took a physical anthropology class first semester of freshman year, and so I started reading it. It's pretty neat. I like it. I just got finished reading Nick Lane's book, The Vital Question, which actually PZ did a you did a review for it, and that's actually a breathtaking book. That was quite an amazing book, I gotta say.
Yeah, Lane's another one at the cutting edge.
Yeah, it was neat stuff.
What book does PZ have? I see, like in the bottom corner there. What is
the Bible? Clearly.
This is the textbook I'm teaching from this semester.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work.
Bigger than everybody's.
What edition is that? I think I have an older edition of that book.
This is the 5th. It's the latest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does it have dogs producing non-dogs?
Yeah.
Crocodile.
Oh, crocodiles. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That G-Man joke.
Yeah. Which I've now read.
Oh my goodness. I have not read that. I miss reading for fun most of the time. I just bought recently early this morning, I bought books on protein purifications and validation of processes because that's my life now. So I was like, I must know the current science associated with protein purification. I'm boring.
We have questions.
We have questions from the audience. Brian Stevens, is this going to be a regular thing? Probably not. There's Nestlig says there's this guy called G-Man that is confused about people saying that we are fish and not fish at the same time. He says, could you ask PZ or someone else who understands that humans and other tetrapods are fish in the cladistic sense? Someone want to take that one?
You just answered it. What are you talking about? You just
yeah. Well, I guess I need you to explain it to this guy.
G-Man was trying to explain this to PZ. It was hilarious. It was one of my hangouts, and G-Man in his and God bless his little heart.
Infinite wisdom.
Trying to explain this to PZ. PZ's like, you're kidding me, right? Because G-Man doesn't know the difference between monophyletic and paraphyletic. He doesn't understand.
I didn't say it was rational infinite wisdom. It might be infinite wisdom in his own mind, so it's okay.
Yeah.
We're in a quantum state of being a fish. We're fish and not fish at the same time.
Yeah, the simplest way to explain that is when we talk about a group now, we include all of its descendants. So fish includes its descendants, and amphibian includes its descendants. not chopping off descendants of a group. And that's why, for example, birds are dinosaurs. They're descended from dinosaurs. And that's where he's getting confused, because he thinks of these groups of organisms in the old-fashioned way before this came along.
Now, how about when they took tetrapods out of
G-Man is confused way before that level.
Well, yeah, but that's what the point of that particular point is, yes.
But G-Man doesn't understand that because tetrapods are no longer in that monophyletic line, it's now a paraphyletic clade. He doesn't understand how in one way we were fish and in other ways we're not, depending on how you're asking the question. He doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
So let's see. We got Sci, whom we haven't heard from in a while, and also PZ. Both you guys, we still gotta get those papers in.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, brother.
Well, I haven't
Sure,
told
I
my
guess.
story either, Jackson. But
That's right. You haven't. So Mel, do you want to go, Mel?
well, no, I
Let
don't
Mel
want to.
go
I don't
first.
want to. I don't want to railroad PZ. I want to hear what he has to say, because he put up with all my technical difficulties earlier today.
All right.
Yes, all I had to do though was sit here, you flail around, and I didn't have to sweat it at all, so it was okay.
Yeah, we're all trying to tell him we can't hear you, and she's just still talking.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go. I'll just. So I share a lot in common with Donald, because I decided I was going to be a scientist at a very, very young age. Before school started, before everything started, I was pretty confident that this is what I wanted to do, and the kinds of things I was doing as a kid was, it was a treat for me when my father would let me clean the fish he caught. Okay, so I would do that. I got into an ugly habit of scanning the highways for roadkill, which I would take back to my little lair in the basement and dissect and do fun things with. And so that was kind of where I was thinking. And then I got into college, and I was still in that same mindset. And for instance, what I initially was interested in studying was comparative anatomy. So I was interested in systematics, comparative anatomy, and all that. And that meant I would go down into one of these dismal basement labs that would have these benches with gutters running down the middle. And you would slap down a dead animal and you'd start taking it apart. Okay. Which is fun. I did a lot of that. That was kind of cool, right? So,
Done my share.
yeah. So there was lots of dissections, lots of, hey, let's find this equivalent muscle in the salamander and in the shark, and all that kind of stuff. But the revelation was that, and I think it was my junior year, I took a cell biology course and went up to the lab, and that was completely different right there. Instead of being sent down into the dank, dark basement for cell biology, we went to the top of the building. This is in Seattle at the University of Washington. And you walked into this lab, and it was all these open windows with a view of Puget Sound. And it was just gorgeous, right? Shiny aluminum countertops everywhere, or stainless steel countertops, and glassware. It was like a revelation just to change the scenery. And then what he brought us up there for was this really simple experiment where in the middle of the lab, he had this little pedestal with a finger bowl full of water, and in it was Strongylocentrotus purpuratus, the sea urchin, right? So,
Sea urchin, yep.
Of course.
yeah, of course.
What a guess.
And it was gorgeous. I mean, this was in a kind of dinosaurian sense, and that here's this shiny high-tech lab, and in the middle of it is this creature that looks like something from primeval seas. It was still draped with bits of algae and all this sort of stuff. And the experiment, well, actually more of an observation that we did is Arthur Whiteley, who was the instructor then, comes in with this gigantic hypodermic syringe full of seawater, and he punches it down into the test of the sea urchin. It makes a nice little crunch, and he injects it. And the sea urchin has this amazing response when you do that. What it does is it starts spewing out gametes. So
wow.
So all of a sudden the water just goes cloudy because it looks almost like milk because it's just full of eggs in this case. He also did this with a male and got sperm. And then what we got to do is take little eyedroppers and take some of each and put it together in a dish on a microscope and watch fertilization happen and watch this animal just develop right there in front of our eyes. And that's when I decided this is what I'm going to do from now on. Is I don't want to waste time with big, lumpy, bloody hunks of meat anymore. I'm going to work on cells, and in particular on the development of cells. And later, when I got off to graduate school, I got to play with zebrafish. So let me see if I can find. I got a few movies. Let's bring this up.
A few little videos.
You see it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a zebrafish. Not a sea urchin. Sea urchins are also cool, but zebrafish are freshwater. It was easy to work with. And what you could do is you could just catch these just as they're being fertilized. That's another thing with the fish. You get to watch them having sex. It's very exciting. And then this is what happens. They just start dividing. Now, this is time lapse, so it's sped up about 900 times. But you can see it just, isn't that amazing? You go from this little blob and it starts dividing and it makes all this tissue. And what you're seeing here now is a pibbly. There's cells migrating out over the yolk. And in a moment, we're going to see the head and tail start to form. It's rolling around, which makes it difficult. There we go. So this is the tails. The tail is off to the right. And on the left, you can see that bulging down at the bottom. Oh, there's the eye starting to form. So you can see this whole process going on with these animals. And the total elapsed time that you see here is about 18 hours. Actually, it's got a timer going for you up there so you can see the whole thing happening. Wow. And then they're swimming around. See, now this is science as far as I'm concerned.
That's way cool.
Yeah, watching cells.
What's the scale on the image, PZ?
The entire embryo, that's about 2 millimeters across. So they're
see that's the pesky problem about Precambrian stuff, because phosphatization only preserves stuff up to 0.5 millimeter. So they can't get embryos big enough preserved to be able to get the clues about what was going on back then.
Right. Let me get rid of this. And so yeah, I can do this all day. Here's another one.
You got your lecture prepared for a 6th hour now?
But anyway, this is just what blows my mind all the time is change and transformation and development. And so this is where I started. This is what I did my research on, was these little critters. But once you start studying development, then you got to start thinking about evolution as well. So I went from developmental biologist who's getting all excited about these fish developing into one who's asking questions about why do they do this? Why do they have eyes forming? Look at that eye forming, right? You can see it right there. It's just amazing. And so that's what I get to do in the lab most of the time. Nowadays, of course, I'm not looking at the big picture like this. I'm looking at individual cells. So in zebrafish, one of the things that interests me is how do you make stripes in a zebrafish? So we've been watching pigment cells as they migrate out and interact with each other to establish the pattern of pigmentation on the surface of the animal. So that's my game nowadays, is let's play with little things and watch them.
So it's not gnomes with teeny tiny paintbrushes painting the zebrafish, right? I'm just making certain.
These are time-lapse movies where we just take a picture every 3 minutes. You could imagine.
Okay.
They could have snuck in.
Yeah, they just dart in there, paint it real quick, dart out before we take.
You can't prove I'm wrong, PZ.
I can't
prove I'm wrong.
Yeah. It's an
sure you're going to have likely. You've got interactive video where you could literally have real time a listing of the genes that are being accessed. Developmental process. So you've got this cascading network of homeoboxes and sonic hedgehogs and PAC6 and all that kind of stuff rippling along in that.
Yeah, there are tools out there now where they're staining for certain gene expression products. So for instance, I've seen some very cool videos where they're staining for this gene called HER, H-E-R, which plays a role in segmentation. You can actually see it cycling and going through these rhythmic, wave-like patterns. that establish the pattern of segments in the animal. So there's lots of cool stuff you can do with this.
Okay, I have a very oddball question for you, PZ.
I also have a question for you after her.
I'm very, very curious because I understand. I know you're an educator and you probably use all kinds of different multimedia type of tools. What is your favorite animated GIF image of a biological process on the molecular level? Is it like kinases, or is it like, motor proteins,
Actually, I got to tell you that you've probably seen the kinesin movies where they're striding along the microtubules. I actually hate those videos. They are
like Disney, like Pixar, don't they?
Yeah, they're so misleading because that's not how they move. They make it like this continuous striding motion as they go down, but that's not what they do. It's all very stochastic, and they will take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And there's just kind of these random oscillations. So when you actually look at
linear movement down the tubule,
no, and it's
I would have got that wrong then, because that's what I always thought.
Intelligent designers love that kind of stuff because it fits into their machinery model.
That's right. The Discovery Institute actually stole that video from was it Ex Vivo made this?
Yes.
And they just said, "Oh yeah, this is so cool," and it looks so directed and purposeful, like little trucks trundling around in the cell. And so they had to make their own copy.
Clearly a guided process.
And the thing is, they duplicated all the mistakes of the Ex Vivo animation. And so, that's not my favorite. I'd actually say that my favorite is in the issue of development in, when was it? It was 93, 94, something like that. They had an all zebrafish development issue. And one of my friends, Rolf Karlstrom, who's out at Amherst, had actually made, and also with Don Kane, had taken one of these videos and they made it into a flip book. So the journal in the top right corner, you could just flip through it and get an animation like I showed you of zebrafish cells dividing and migrating and forming an embryo.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I have a
very low
question
tech. This was before we had
the
animators.
audience for you, PZ. The question is from Rational Mind. It is: do the pigment stripes line up with the somites?
No, they're independent of the somites. They do. So there's the somite boundaries, okay, but there's also this horizontal septum that runs the length of the animal. That's also where the lateral line forms. And the first stripes migrate down and they align with the horizontal septum. And then there's another set of stripes on top and another set of stripes that line up with where the gut contacts the myotomes down below. Yeah, they're called zebrafish, but the stripes do not run this way. They run that way. It's
right.
And they're not really zebras, right?
No, they're not. They're not really.
Pineapples actually apples?
Yes, and you'll have to tell G-Man they're also not related to horses.
He'll be so enthused to know that. By the way,
not closely related to horses.
They're not horse kind.
What is it, Steve?
She was talking about like the animations. It's not really an animation, but have you ever seen on the ATP synthase? They have that little actin filament on the first time. Oh, the rotary motion.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
F1.
Yeah.
Catalytic converter, whatever, F1 converter, whatever they call it, the F1 core. That to me is one of the coolest little motions I've ever seen, because it's literally showing it's like a motor, and the idea loved that. They're like, oh, that's a motor.
But it's also not really well understood, like how that works, how that little motor turns. I know there's like some ATP
confirmational changes because of the it's just conformational changes as far as I'm aware. Right?
Yeah, they're still wrangling around how the motor proteins, mode A and B, function in the flagellum. I guess they found a homolog.
They slide.
But
don't they slide back and forth?
Don't they're like connected like a ladder, and they shift back and forth like this, right? That's kind of how the flagella. Yeah. Oh, eukaryotic. Okay.
Yeah, the prokaryotic flagella is a whip. Eukaryotes are like you say, they're
like a little attached ladder that slides back and forth, right?
Yes.
So we still have Mel and Cy. You guys still haven't told
Mel.
your story.
Oh, me? Okay. Well, I wanted Cy to tell his story because I'm sure he has jokes associated that I said that he would tell.
Okay, go Cy.
A zebrafish. We have a zebrafish here.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
No.
Dan must.
Oh, that's horrible.
Is that an angelfish? That looks more like an angelfish than a zebrafish. I can't tell. From
Yeah.
the box.
PZ, that was the most exasperated sigh I've ever heard.
You haven't been in my classes.
Oh my god! All right, Cy, what you got for us?
Love these cell division videos, and looking at those, I maintain my position that nature is sufficiently amazing that I have no need for the supernatural. It's just not necessary. That's enough for me. I don't need to believe in more as a result of that. Anyway, all right. Well, basically, all I really wanted to say is how I first got interested in science in general. At-home experimentation is all Tesla coils and Van de Graaff generators and things of that sort. But my first love was space science, which is a broad field. And I'm sure this is going to be a shock to all that what first interested me in that. Do I really need to say it? Star Trek, the original series. That was it. As a very small individual.
She's breaking out her toys.
There we go. We have visual aids. Very nice.
We have visual aids, but like warp bubbles are a thing. Well, they're trying it to be a thing, right?
Yeah, mathematically so.
Yeah, they're trying. So go
Cy. Barometric or something it's called.
Actually, I have it on good authority that it's proceeded to more than the mathematic state at the moment.
Well, but you need like an infinite amount of dark matter and negative. Like negative energy in order for it to.
Nope, I don't have details, but I have from an extremely good source. It is being.
Where you get your stuff for your flux capacitor.
Let's get Dr. Ross in here. He might know a little bit about this.
The word "efforted" was used. Anyway, yeah. So Star Trek was, as a very small person, just caught my interest, and apparently I wasn't the only one, because I just about a year and a half ago I attended a NASA event called Star Trek and its influence on NASA culture.
That is a thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They recognized that a large amount of the big brains over there first got interested in the same way I did. And of course they took their path. They were.
And it worked.
Yeah, and I figured, I was going to, how I was going to accomplish the same goals they did is I started a computer company. It didn't work out. I am not in space.
Okay,
but
SciStrike, would you consider a 3D printer be like the replica? What do they call them? Replication units?
Replicator, yeah. Well, the flip phone, communication tabs, all of that kind of stuff. The people that invented cell phones consciously had the idea they want to have a Star Trek communicator in their hand.
Indeed, yeah, that I had heard that as well.
And then we moved on to next generation tablets, so it's okay.
Yes, yeah, a lot of good stuff came from there. But anyway, and you would think back when the original series, it was reruns. I thought it was the first time I saw it, so I was pretty amazed. From that point, with what was going on in space exploration and things of that, so the efforts going on, it wasn't that. Not only wasn't it that, there was no clear path from Captain Kirk on the Enterprise. No clear path to get to that from what we were doing. That wasn't going to take much longer than my lifetime. Looking back, I would have thought that I would have lost interest. And it's not that. We're not going to have those adventures. Not going to happen. It just got a little bit older, and from then until now, the value beyond the adventure aspect hit me. Even very young, started to see benefits of what was going on. Not just we discovered a new planet. There are direct benefits like scientific knowledge, innovation, things of that sort. both for existing traveling in space, but even more so, how to stay in space without, dying. Back in the Apollo days, water filtration was a bear on Earth terrestrially. Couldn't do that in a space capsule. It took too much energy and it was big. We got to come up with something new. Water filtration unit, use silver atoms, about as big as a cassette tape. Oop, I'm dating myself. About as big as a box of cigarettes. Those are
pencil reminders.
Hey,
You
Ryan, I used to have
didn't say
cassette tape
8-track.
also.
Audio medium
for those
You
of you
didn't say 8 tracks.
made out of Scotch tape.
in the old days. Anyway, yeah, and lots advantages. Things were being used here on this planet, and that continues to today with the ISS, with telemedicine, research in psychological stress in different areas, nutrition, cell behavior. I think they're still doing experiments, something with heart cells or something of that sort now. International cooperation. Where the hell else do we have that going on to that extent?
See, I was going to ask you about that and see if that kind of what sparked a bit of interest in Star Trek was the appreciation of people with knowledge and the diverse environment that kind of saw beyond the differences and like, hey, we're all working on this together and it doesn't matter, what you look like or any of that. Everybody had a role and everybody was significant.
Agreed.
So,
There was a Russian helmsman. There was a black woman on the communication stand. There was an alien at the science station. It didn't matter what species you were. It didn't matter what race or color or creed you were. You were in the adventure and you were all pulling together.
Everybody was together and knowledge was appreciated. It wasn't shunned or said, that's stupid.
Everybody was
stuff.
kung fu.
I have a trivia question, and let's see who can answer the trivia question. It's very important. Okay. I think one person may have got this right before, and you can ask the live chat too. I watched the live chat. So, who was the very original, the first numero uno captain of the Enterprise?
See, I'm going to go
James Pike, played by
Captain Pike.
Jeffrey Hunter.
Yeah.
Incorrect. RJ's right.
Pike is the wrong answer. Go ahead.
Right.
Oh, are you talking
Right.
about
Right.
Enterprise, the very, very first one, the one with the TV that came
Very
out?
first. Yep.
Well, with Scott Bakula, that one?
No. Before that.
I don't count
Anybody
Scott Bakula.
It was actually a comic, but it.
Yeah,
Nobody?
I thought it was Captain Pike, but
No, before Captain Pike, it was actually a guy named Robert T. April was the very first captain, and then after Robert T. April, it was Christopher Pike, and then James T. Kirk.
Okay.
That was an extra credit.
Oh, they never did any. They never did.
See, I thought I was going to ask an easy question, but that wasn't an easy question. But that's true.
Well, it depends on your perspective because it could have been Scott Bakula.
You're talking about like the Steve.
You just have a thing for Scott Bakula, don't you?
No, I never watched that series. I got through 2 episodes. I'm like, I'm done.
It's like Discovery. It was so bad.
Yeah, Steve, that was a great question because in freshman year of high school in math, that was an extra credit 3-point question verbally given. And yes, the entire room got it wrong then as well.
What the question I asked?
Yes, everybody said Pike.
Oh, so did you? So you agree that I'm right?
Yes, everybody said Pike in the room though, including me.
Well,
I was embarrassed. It's awful.
The TV series. No, the Pike was the original pilot.
Yeah, it was prior to that. But.
Okay, so we're right now, and we still haven't heard Mel's story, or I haven't told my story either. But I'll tell after.
Can I wrap it up?
Go ahead.
I need a Uranus joke, SciStrike.
No, they'll none of that. There'll be none of that. I save those for Friday nights so that I can be demonetized all nice. All right.
Oh boy.
All right. Yeah.
I need a bleeper on my channel.
Yeah. I'll handle my own bleeping. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
There would be nothing left on your channel if you bleeped everything. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That'd be a long bleep. Yeah. Then later on, I started to become aware of some of the other advantages we're getting. like economic, for example. I'm thinking the supply chain. That just looking at NASA is huge. How many people are employed? How much money is being pumped into the economy by this? And then, not only in that limited economy, the actual economy is expanded to off Earth, with businesses becoming more interested in, well, obviously, low Earth orbit and geostationary satellites has been a thing for quite a while, but industries are becoming interested in things like space mining and things of that sort. So there are advantages to this kind of thing. And it's more than a coincidence, I suspect, that during the Apollo program, people say, "Oh, what benefit? Why did we waste all that money?" It was not a waste if we look at the what was going on. This is an indirect benefit, I think, but it happened in between 61 and 72. Education skyrocketed. Number of like physical science PhDs tripled in that period. Engineering nearly the same. PhDs earned. Now I know correlation does not equal causation, but there are indicators that this kind of inspiring of younger people did have this effect, because after 72 things started to taper off again. So that period of we can do these things, all you have to do is learn, did have an effect on people. And that made me even more impressed with why this kind of thing is important. And when I hear why are we wasting all this money up there when there are problems down here, I suspect they haven't talked to any of the people that are still alive because of the left ventricular assist device, which is a heart pump that is used to keep people alive while they're waiting for a transplant, or in some cases, removes the need for a heart transplant, which was basically built on the technology of the fuel pumps for a space shuttle, as I recall. NASA was working with a doctor. Ooh, I'm getting old. I can't remember. DeBakey? That sound familiar? Yeah, I think.
Christian
Yeah, that could have
DeBakey,
been him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's artificial heart pump. It was based on the fuel pump from the space shuttle. Why are we wasting all that money up there? That's similar to the if climate change is just a hoax, we'll have made a better world for no reason at all. So that's,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm an
clearly-
Isaac Asimovian. That the future involves a lot of things connecting up, and you can't tell in advance what's going to turn out to be extremely useful. To hear somebody using a computer or cell phone that uses integrated circuits that were developed exclusively because the space program needed really small computers to carry aboard is one of the great ironies of life. And I can easily imagine a situation where if we had a really aggressive space program where we had acceleration platforms that could do 1G, so it's only a week to go to Pluto, you're going to be paying attention to systems on board so much, spin back to Earth, have home recycling systems that were developed from the space program, and kids will down through the remnants of that giant tube they built in New York City to carry sewage, and they're going, people used to do that? Didn't they have home recycling systems? Ugh!
Yep. Good times.
Yeah, I would say though there's another factor too though is Sputnik.
Yeah.
That I was the fortunate recipient of a huge amount of investment by this country in childhood education. That things like the BSCS biology program was a direct response to that. That the federal government was actually investing in science education for young people in the early 60s and early 70s.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to be going the opposite way nowadays for some reason.
That's right.
Well,
Kids don't need money to go to school.
CSC is what spurred creationism movement, because suddenly they were teaching evolution in the schools again. They were catching up on the science curve. So all the stuff that had been left out after the Scopes era got put back in. And suddenly, whoa, the creationists woke up in a hurry and started complaining about it. So there was an unintended side effect of that as well, all because of Sputnik.
And they got their butt kicked in every single court case. I mean, even though Scopes lost, the law was still overturned, and everyone considered it a win for evolution teaching, even though it was
at the local level. Jackson, the local have these small boards.
Even Jay Gould.
But I mean, are you guys familiar that creationism and intelligent design is still legally allowed to be taught alongside evolution in Tennessee, where the Scopes trial had taken place?
They've tried for years to get the law repealed, and they've never been able to pull it off.
But the thing is it's actually legally science teachers can teach intellectual design and creationism alongside evolution as a viable scientific fact in the state.
The controversy, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
There's a lot of de facto things. Oklahoma is another one that officially has a pro-evolution science platform. Age of the Earth, everything is all fine and dandy. But at the grassroots level, there are districts where the teachers are told not to say how old rocks are because they will offend the local creationists. So you get an awful lot of de facto creationism that goes on. About 15% of science teachers are creationists in the U.S.
Well, when you look at Tennessee, flip side, because I've taught in Tennessee before, flip side of that is the students are required to take an end of course exam. There's not a lick of intelligent design on there. Right. Not even a little bit. So the problem is that's in high school. They have all of these tests that they have to take that are tied to teacher effectiveness. Okay. So when the biology teachers get a hold of these students in middle school, they're told, oh, evolution is wrong. And they can teach that. They can say, it's stupid. This is what it is. Then I, as a former teacher, would get these kids, and I know that they're going to have to take this test with evolution included because that's a state required standard. They have to learn this information. And so they've been told by other teachers that it's wrong and it's evil and it's terrible. That's not the correct information. They don't know the truth by the time they got to me. And then when I did teach them, I was like, you have to know this information because this is on the test and not creationism. And I'm assuming that you have all the information you need for that. So you need to know this in order to pass this test.
Well,
so it's insane because no biology teacher in Tennessee that I know of would spend any time on creationism because it's not on the test.
Well,
so
see,
there's the flip side of that.
My gripe is with the testing themselves. You look at the ACT, SAT, etc. There's more or less no science on them, even in the science section. It's reading comprehension part 2. It's can you read this graph and tell us what it says, which is only a part of science, It's
but you'd be surprised how many kids don't know how to do that. They'll look at a graph and freak out.
Well,
and
okay, well, fair. But also, Louisiana still allows intelligent design to be taught alongside evolution, which is why we had Zach Copeland back in 2008, 2009 petitioning the school board, Bobby Jindal at the time. He got all the list of like Nobel laureates and teachers from around the state saying, hey, keep this stuff out of our classroom. It's not good for the students. And unfortunately, the law is still in effect to this day.
I have a limited knowledge of Louisiana education system, but I do have friends that live
there is
in
limited
New Orleans.
Louisiana education, so that's okay.
Yeah, I know. In New Orleans and Metairie, they're like, we keep our kids out of the public school system because it's so bad. We just put them in private schools as much as we can, and there are people that will pay their last dime to do that because the public school system is so problematic. Especially my understanding of New Orleans and Metairie and the surrounding areas. But then again, it's limited to just a handful of people that I know that have kids there, but that's it. I don't have a vast sample size, so I can't speak to that.
in the Louisiana school system, and she is always calling attention to how underfunded they are, and that the teachers have to bring supplies to school because they just don't have any money on it. The building is falling apart, so the parishes are just terrible there. We have a very good educational system here in Washington State, even though they're still locally done, and we all have new buildings and new material. Boy, I walk into my old Shadle Park High School there and see the giant computer media center that they've got in there, and I'm going, whoa, that wasn't the way I was there in the 60s.
Oh yeah, it's the teachers they're having to do all the same stuff with yet more students and less funding from the states, and so it's a mess. Mel, you haven't told your story yet.
I haven't told my story.
And then, because you go, and then I'm going to go last. And
You're going to go last. You're going to bring it up.
I will. Yes, I thought since I'm the host, I'll just go last. That's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. So my story. I was always fascinated with science ever since I was little. I wanted a microscope. I wanted a chemistry set. I wanted all these things, but all of those things were like in the boys section of toys. So it was very difficult for me to get family members to buy me things like this. Like, you really want a chemistry set? I'm like, yes. It wasn't until maybe I was 15 or 16 before I finally got microscopes and chemistry sets, because I would just be like, y'all gave me Barbie dolls. And so I would just like sit them in front of the TV and let them watch stuff. I'm like, what's this to do with these Barbie dolls? Here's a Barbie car. That's great. I'm just going to put it in front of the TV and we're going to watch this science show or something. What do you want me to do with this? So I've always had a hard time with that. And growing up with a religious family and a religious background, I was the child that made all the questions and stuff. I was like, why is the world like this? Why is this thing over here? And like, my Sunday school teachers hated me. They'll be like, long hair is a sin for men and short hair is a sin for women. I'm like, but what about Samson? And then they're like, yeah, we'll talk about that next week. So I brought up all of the, I was the controversy in the classroom. And they're like, and Maybelline makes makeup out of aborted fetuses. I'm like, do they really? Where did you read that? And they're going, yeah, we'll talk about that next week. So it was always, we'll talk about that. I always asked the questions and nobody would ever answer my questions. And they were like very logical. Where did you read this? Or what are you talking about? Or what about this thing that I read? And why would God make long hair a sin if he gave it to Samson? Why would he make a blessing a sin? I don't understand what you're saying. So it's just like, I always question stuff and nobody ever gave me my answers. And I mentioned this in the chat I did with PZ is when I finally went to college, when I finished my first degree, I went back as an adult. Life got in the way. I had already had a couple years in college under my belt, giant student loan. I'm like, well, screw this. I need to finish my degree anyway. So I went back, finished my bachelor's of science in 2011, went back in 2009. I only had 2 years. So the class that answered every question I ever had was the evolution class. Answered everything I ever wanted to know about the origin of the species, life. I read the book by Darwin. I just was like, this is amazing. I'm like, this is what I have been looking for my entire life. Everybody just is like, we'll talk about that next week. Or, yeah, you just need to have faith, or you just need to, go pray about it. God gave me a brain for a reason. Why are you people telling me I'm not supposed to think? What is going on? So having been a girl that couldn't do science when I was little because nobody would buy me the stuff that I wanted until I was older and was like, would you guys please give me a chemistry set? I just want one. I just want to see how it works. I just want to play with it just a little bit. I've been asking questions my whole life. And so when I finally took my evolution class, I was just like, it's so simplistic. It's beautifully simplistic and it makes complete and total sense. And so one of the first trips I ever had to go to London, they had a treasures exhibit, and I think they still have it, where they have like their favorite pieces they've collected over the history of them being open, the Natural History Museum. And you can go see it still. And I visit it. Every time I go to London, I visit Darwin. Darwin's my man. So I visit Darwin. And then I go upstairs to the treasures exhibit. And they have a first edition of The Origin of Species by Darwin. And I cry every time I see it. My answers were right there. It's like nobody would let me read it. Nobody would explain it to me. I didn't have it in biology class. I didn't have it at all. I'm like, this is all I wanted and needed to know. And like, this is so important. And I'm a little welling up right now. But it took me my entire life to 2011. 2011, I got my answers. That's like 7 years ago. So it's profound for me. And to me, since then, I've picked up 3 other degrees because I'm just like, this is it. This is great. Oh my God.
Are off and you are running.
I'm like, I can get a biochemistry undergrad. Fantastic. I just need 3 classes. Great. Master's in teaching. Why not? Master's in chemistry. Sure. Bring it on. I have a giant student loan and I don't want to talk about that. But, but to me, that's an investment in myself. My credit score is terrible because of it. And I'm going to talk to them about that later. But to me, that's an investment in myself. And I've been so fulfilled since then. And it's been wonderful. I feel like I'm that little girl in the job that I have now. I'm working with proteins. The stuff we do at my lab, there's nobody else in the country that does it except the CDC. So I'm learning stuff that nobody else does. And I'm just like, I get to play with science and chemistry sets all day. And I know it's for industry, but I don't care. It's fun for me. I'm like, what can I do to solve this thing? Oh, this is new. I get to go do this. So it's just, whether even as a teacher, I loved talking about science. I could always go back to do that and be happy. I could do this and be happy. But that's the thing. So that's my story, is that life-changing moment of learning everything I've ever wanted to know in one class and just took off from there. I'm like, I can learn this. This is okay. And I can do that. I have that capability, even though people said I couldn't. I had an English teacher who found out I wanted to get into medicine at one point in time. She goes, "You're too stupid. I can't believe you'd want to do medicine." An English teacher to a 12-year-old kid. He's like, "You're too stupid. You couldn't even be a nurse." And I'm like,
I've had teachers like that. Yeah, I've seen teachers like that.
You know, and she was an African-American woman telling me that I was too stupid to do science because I was bored in her class. So I'm just
it's funny you mentioned that, because I think that happens to a lot of people. You get really, I didn't do really well in high school. I was like C. I was bored. I was literally bored. And then I took the ASVAB. I got a perfect score on that. And then when I went to Naval Nuclear Power School, I was challenged and found out science is hard.
It
is. I was actually engrossed in it. I was like, this is awesome. I'm actually learning something here, because in high school you don't, and a lot of kids, they think that you're not smart, but you're not learning anything. This is like basal stuff.
It's like an endurance test.
And I'm thinking, I learned this in years ago. You know?
Yeah, it's like an endurance test, and it's sometimes I feel like I would feel like, well, you need to write the answer to this, and I almost felt like, well, do you not know what the answer is? Is that why you need me to explain it to you? So
I want to know why X keeps getting lost, because I have to find X a lot.
You know, your X isn't coming back, so why are you asking me to keep looking for it?
What is the joke? I'm not a therapist. Math book, solve your own problems. Yeah. Here we go back to 7th grade.
I was the same way in school. I was the same way in school. I mean, I either got A's or I got D's. You know, I mean, I either liked the class and I excelled in it, or I didn't care, and I barely did what I had to do to get by, and that was it. So
I had 4.0 in college. You know, I was on D's list, but it was a lot more challenging. But in high school, I sucked. I was so bored. I was just worried about the girls. I was like sitting next to the computer. That's all I cared about back then.
Our school systems here, both at the high school and the college level, had an awful lot of really good interdisciplinary stuff. So you would have things that would be cross-fertilization. And when I hit up into college, we had a department there where we were studying, for example, a thing on the German culture from the formation of the empire up to World War II. And it was interdisciplinary, where you had people from music, the arts, history, science, all of that, all cross-connecting in the seminars. And that kind of stuff, you learn so much more when you pull stuff together from lots of different places, rather than saying, oh, well, the idea that you were told that, oh, no, you aren't smart enough to do that. You have a role to fit. You have to pigeonhole.
Yes.
And
but see, my story is not that uncommon from other women. See, and that's something that I think is kind of foreign, and not because I don't think guys are bigoted or they don't understand things. I think their life experience is far different from that, from a woman.
I can tell you, as a parent, though, I'd be infuriated if somebody told my daughter that.
But
I'd
see,
be honest with you.
But they said this to me in front of my mother, and so they told me how stupid I was in front of other parents to my mother in the middle of like a parent night. And so she had to go to the board, and they had to make a new rule that you cannot, they made a new rule because you could not criticize a child openly in public.
You mean
in front of other parents.
They had to make a new rule? Okay, great.
They did actually have to make a rule about that. And so my mother is a self-made woman. She's a vice president of a small company, but she came from a very poor family. I mean, I grew up almost in poverty myself. And so, but she's worked for everything she's ever gotten. We all learned a strong work ethic from my mother. I mean, and you know, I'm actually the first person in my entire family on both sides since we got off the boat in this country to have this many degrees. My sister was the first to get 2, and she was the first to get 1. My brother was the second to get 1. I was the third to get 1, but I am the first in my family on both sides to have 4. Let alone.
I definitely think that you shouldn't be called an idiot until you're in college. Then your professors can call you whatever they want, and they're probably right most of the time. So
I don't know, man. I had some graduate professors that I thought were pretty freaking stupid.
Looking at you, PZ.
Only because
I don't know if PZ said it, but I'm sure he's thought it quite a few times. Like, you're too stupid to be in this class.
Well, but I mean,
no, you don't do that, because the students are there to learn. As long as they're willing to learn, it's your job to help them out. So no.
When I say I know stupid professors, I mean that stupid in that you can have professors that are entirely bigoted and overconfident and are not willing to accept evidence outside of their own.
Same for students. You can have students like that too.
Yes, you have students like that too. But you know, I think there's a lot of forms of intelligence. And so you can have emotional intelligence, you can have artistic intelligence, you can have, you know, academic type of intelligence. But if you're sitting there and you're willful ignorance, there are professors that do have willful ignorance to where they will not accept anything outside of their own bubble of knowledge. That's problematic, and that's a real thing. And we have seen that, especially with in the scientific community, where you have those that have blackballed other people that had theories, or you know, that contradicted other theories that were at one time well established but have since been overturned. So that's where you kind of run into this a little this here and there with that. And so when I say I've run into some stupid professors, that's what I mean by that. Not that they're intellectually stupid and that they're willfully ignorant.
Yeah,
there you go again, criticizing professors again.
PZ, we all love you. You know that. We all love you.
I agree with you again, but it's
Come here and get a squishy science hug.
But I think he would give you an A.
No, you have to earn an A. I do not give A's.
She is the 18. I'm telling you, she's my go-to person anymore for a lot of this stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm confused here. Mel, help out. Come on into the hangout. Come on in. Get in here.
You will.
Talk to me like Gwyneth Paltrow, please.
Man, I really wish you would come out with me. God.
I'm trying. I really hope you succeed on that. You have no idea.
I'll write an open letter and do a video. I'm like, come on, Gwyneth. Washington Post quoted me once. You know you want some of this.
Oh, I would promote that so much.
So
But that
Oof,
Neil
almost an
Shubin
hour
book
and a
that was mentioned earlier
Uh-huh.
on geology, and like that latest one, I think it was Jim who showed it up. He went into an awful lot of examples of women scientists who were marginalized in their day.
Yes.
The woman that in the 1920s, and I've remembering her name right off the bat, but the point is that she was one of the first ones who was seeing the new measurements of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. I thought, this could have something to do with that Wegener continental drift theory. And the old boy network that she was in was saying, oh, no, that's a silly preposterous. You don't have to think about a woman. You really are unimportant. And she got edged out of the community at the time. Well, where might we have been? Wait 40 years to get down to the magnetic data that suddenly converted everything over to plate tectonics.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing. That's the kind of the argument that I do. And some people are like, well, you're a social justice warrior. I'm like, I'm really not. I'm like, I'm part of a group that's been a boys club. And one of my favorite excerpts I ever read, and I kept it on my desk when I was in grad school. And it was an open letter to a particular magazine, not a magazine, but a journal that was an engineering journal. It was an open letter to all of my female classmates from a male classmate, talking about everything that they had already overcome by the time they got to the class. I mean, because I had been told I'm too stupid to do science. When are you going to have babies? You should really be at home with your children. I had a research mentor one time told me, you should be at home with your daughter. I don't know why you're here. Why are you here? You should be at home with your daughter. I had another that I did research for a year who said, science is hard and you're a girl. You should be a teacher. This was 2009, 2009, 2011.
Yeah.
We're talking absurd. Like the 50s or 60s.
Well, we say that every year. We say, oh, it's current year. And then someone says, hold my beer.
But that's the thing. And I would report that to the university. Really, it's my word against his. And he was on the graduate board because I was considering getting in graduate school for biology. And he goes, science is hard and you're a girl. You should be a teacher. We need better teachers anyway. And I was a good teacher. I'm a good scientist. I'm good at a lot of things, that I put my mind to it. But it's challenging. It's challenging a lot for women in these fields. And because we have that kind of mentality. And so I can't imagine, like, Hidden Figures made me cry because I'm like, I can't imagine being a woman of color, just saying, please just give me a chance because I can do this. I can do this. And just give me a chance. And they're like, well, she's a woman of color. She's a woman and she's Black. What does she know? It's a lot. So it's
over in the live chat. Brings up Murray Tharp. I think that's the name of the scientist involved, the geologist back there. And so thank you, Nestle.
Yes. And so we're looking at all that. And I'm with you on, think of how far we could be right now if we had more diversity in the sciences.
Think of how far we'd be if Aristotle hadn't convinced everybody that matter wasn't made of tiny particles, but that it's earth, wind, air, earth, air, fire, and water. Think of how far we'd be if everyone just listened to Democritus, right?
Yeah.
How long they had to go before somebody like Galileo actually figured out to do an experiment and worked out that objects accelerate when they fall. It took that long.
So Jackson, what's your story? We've all talked to you to death.
That's all right. I enjoy listening to everyone because you're all way smarter than me. And so I enjoy listening to all of you. I have a lot to learn here. It involves fish because I love fish. I have 2 fish tanks here in my room right now. It's actually gotten a lot darker. Well, how about that? Now I'm just a floating head. I didn't realize that. But yeah, I've got 2 fish tanks here in my room. I've actually at one point had like 5 tanks going at once. I just love fish. Got 2 goldfish in this one, and then a cichlid and a yo-yo loach, and an African dwarf frog in the other one. And so my story is actually about fish. One of the things I find really interesting about cichlids in particular is that they speciate extremely rapidly, especially in Lake Tanganyika and Malawi and Victoria, the African cichlids. And so part of what has aided their speciation process is that geologically you can see that the the water in Lake Tanganyika, for instance, has fluctuated over the past 12,000 years or so. It has high points and then low points, and so cichlids generally are reef-like fish, or they live near sandbars or reefs or near the ground, so they're not likely to swim out in the open water. So when the water lowers, it cuts them off. They go to these places that are nearby, but then when the water raises up, then it cuts them off because there's this big open area that you can't cross now. It's like from Finding Nemo, you've got the edge of the reef, and you can't go out there, out in the big open area.
That's where the scary predators are.
Exactly. And so, well, thanks to, I think it's the Egyptian government, they actually released some predators into the water because they thought that the cichlid population was going to overpopulate. And so they released the pike into one of the lakes, and it's eradicated several different species of cichlids because the scientists were all saying, no, don't do this. You will severely destabilize the environment. But the government said, nah, we're good. We're going to do it anyways.
We know better than you scientists.
Plus
Exactly.
we got extra pike.
Exactly. And so we have all these extra pike lying around. We got to use them somewhere. And so, due to it's actually one of my favorite chapters in Dawkins' book, The Ancestor's Tale, is the cichlid's tale. He's got this chart with genes from the different cichlids, how these genes are placed biographically throughout the populations. It's really cool. I'd recommend everybody read that book. It's a great book. Also read RJ's book.
But it's still a fish. It's still a fish.
It's still just a fish.
It's still a fish.
It didn't turn into a bird.
Yeah.
I literally just saw somebody saying the same thing. They have two finches. Like, it's still a finch. I'm like, what is it supposed to be? A turnip? I'm like,
any evolutionists can never conceptualize speciation. There's a literal 100% failure rate across the entire.
The brain just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
I have to argue though that birds are still fish.
Okay.
Especially if you spell it G-H-O-T-I like Bernard Shaw.
Yeah, you got ducks. They swim a lot. And then you got some other birds that hang out in the water a lot. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
they have feathers. Feathers are fancy scales.
Of ducks, there's actually a goose-like dinosaur that's been recently discovered named Halscaraptor.
Yeah, brand new.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the paper on its amphibious ecomorphology, which is very intriguing because you don't see semi-aquatic dinosaurs a whole lot, and so this is very neat stuff that they've got.
More data for anti-evolutionists to ignore.
Well, it's still just a dinosaur kind. So
I once heard that. Scientists were using chicken bones to make dinosaur fossils as a conspiracy to get rid of religion. That was something that was said in my class once, and I just looked at them. I was like, okay.
That one.
There's so much money in dinosaur bones.
There's actually a fear of ducks. Like, even if there's no duck around, that you think that a duck or goose is staring at you. It's a legitimate fear. I don't know how to pronounce this word, so I put it in the group chat. So I'm not even drinking.
Oh, and that's yeah.
Go for it, RJ. Go ahead. Because I'm not going to try to pronounce this word. I just know what it means.
I think Jackson's probably better. He manages to wrap his tongue around all of those genus names way better than I do. I tangle up easily.
Do it, Jackson. How do you pronounce that word?
How do I pronounce what word? Where are we looking?
The one in the group chat. I say it's anatidophobia. That's it.
Anatidophobia.
Anatidophobia. Yeah,
is
so
that
it means
fear of
literally
ducks?
the fear of ducks staring at you, even if there's no duck around.
That duck's okay with me as long as it's not looking like a clown.
Don't ask how I remember that. I don't even know.
If it's a clown that looks like a duck that's staring at me, or a duck that looks like a clown,
and you could pioneer an entirely new phobia.
Yeah, I don't do clowns and duck clowns. I don't care.
No clowns. We all hate clowns. After I read it, no more clowns.
All right.
Clowns should be illegalized everywhere.
I don't know. People are like, nobody should be scared of clowns. I said, but if you read the history of clowns, that's the very reason why they were generated. The bones of children are why their face is white. They crush up the bones of children and put it on their face. I mean, it's just like, look at the Smithsonian magazine. They have a whole section just on the history
No,
of
thank you.
clowns. I'm just like, and people are like, why are people scared of clowns? I'm like, because they're jerks. They're mean to their friends. They shove them in cannons. They hit them with bats. I'm like, why would anybody like a clown? They're horrible. And they wear this stuff. You know?
So, are there any stories anyone wants to add? Because we've been at this for about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half. So, is there anything anyone wants to add? Then I guess we can.
The secrets of the universe in 1 hour and a half.
Exactly, and then
we're good.
So
I don't know. I mean, okay. So, what is everybody's favorite science fiction film? We know what SciStrike is. He's told us he's a Trekker, man, or Trekkie. Do you prefer Trekkie or Trekker?
Oh, Jackson. Question. You mentioned there was a little noise over here, so I didn't hear it. You were talking about with the things in the room and all that, and you said at one point I had 5 something. What'd you say?
Oh, tanks. I had 5 freshwater tanks all at once that I had in my.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, I'll never be invited here again. Okay.
They weren't army tanks. If you had like 5 army tanks that were run by fish, that'd be awesome.
At one point, I had 14, but now I'm down to 12. So, but mine are. I have both aquariums and terrariums, so I'm literally surrounded by them right now. I mean, I have.
Yeah, we can see them in your feed.
Yeah, different reptiles and amphibians, and from axolotls to red-eyed tree frogs.
Your axolotl was cute.
Dragons. Yeah.
Well, PZ has a fish cat, so.
No, he has a video of axolotl like eating a worm, and it is like, oh, it's so cute. You just want to pet it, and
actually, I would. When I move back to Shreveport, I'm thinking of getting a Gnathosomus petersi, which is the elephant fish. There's these guys that get about that long. They got these long. It looks like they have a long nose, which they sift through the sediment with. They're more mirrored, so they send off these little electrical signals. But it's actually their rostrum. It's the bottom jaw, which they're using to sift around. They're crazy looking.
How is that like not food for nightmares?
Well, there's actually a species of dolphin that evolved that has this very long bottom jaw. I think it's called semi-rostrum.
See, there's some things I'm like, man,
you were not in here before we went on air. What we were looking at with these pictures of sun spiders and potato bugs and all these creepy things. It was
unfortunate.
The worst nightmare. Let me tell you.
Gosh,
if there's a Satan, it created these things. That's for damn sure.
Like what that vampire squid. Have you seen the vampire squid? And then it's like, depending on which version of Planet Earth, because I haven't seen the latest version of Planet Earth, but there's like the American version with Sigourney Weaver, which I do not recommend. You need the David Attenborough one. The David Attenborough one is far better, but the DVDs they released in America were Sigourney Weaver, and I'm like, it is not the same. I do not like her. You know, she's reading literally the same script about the vampire squid. But when David Attenborough does it, it's just like, it's so enthralling. He's like, this is Planet Earth. I'm like, I know it is. You know, it's Sigourney Weaver. It's like, this is Planet Earth. I'm like, yeah. I know.
Some people have a better knack at narration than others.
Yeah.
On the science fiction thing, Quatermass in the Pit is high on my list, and the Andromeda Strain as well.
Oh, the Andromeda
Strain. Although I love
a
lot of ones.
You know what, RJ? Fun fact: my neighbor was actually in the original Andromeda Strain. He played the Colonel. His name was Raymond Beery.
Oh, neat! Yeah, the major people in it were all Canadians.
Yeah, Raymond Beery played the Colonel in the original Andromeda Strain, and his wife was in an episode of Star Trek. Excuse me, called "City in the Clouds." She played the leader of the Troglodytes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
3rd season, I think.
Hey, just one last thing on the pets. This is I actually took this picture in my living room. So
tree frogs.
Yeah, I love these guys. I've got a couple of these guys, and they're amazing.
They're so cute.
But yeah, they're really cool. So I want to get finches. I don't have finches yet. Because of Darwin. But the problem with that is I have cats. So I just I'm a little worried about that. So think that I have to figure out what to do with the cats before I do anything with finches there. So yeah.
Indeed.
Oh goodness.
Okay,
I
so
forgot to say that before you go off the air. I promised that I would. This is for SciStrike. Drink.
Drink.
You should have called drink in
Drink,
to that.
drink up,
Sorry, man.
everybody. This is iced tea, by the way.
God.
I just, you know what? This is for you, my friend. Drink.
Oh my gosh.
When I made
Is that like moonshine? Is that like legit moonshine, Steve? Because I think I've seen that in the liquor store.
Oh, cow.
It's like Tennessee moonshine or something.
Yeah, it's called a palate whiskey. No, it's only 80 proof, but man, it's 3 years age. It's still got a kick, though.
cool looking jug.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to keep that.
What are you going to put in it?
I don't know.
Are you going to have a romantic dinner and put a candle in it like they do like on Lady and the Tramp and stuff like that? Yeah.
Who's going to have a romantic dinner with? I mean, live in the middle of nowhere.
Here's a whiskey jug with a candle in it for my lady.
Okay, so we ready to jump off the air? Is everybody ready? You gotten out all your sciencey stories?
Oh, I could be here for like 4 days, Jackson, easily. So it's like
we could talk about pulling halos, and then I'm good to go, man.
Even that, man, it's like every
one
single
topic I actually kind of know something about. The rest, this biology stuff, I have no idea. You know, I'm just going with the flow on biology. I took a couple courses in college, and that was it.
Oh goodness.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So.
Yeah, if we're
thanks for coming, everybody.
I would just like to say it has been an honor to be here with each and every one of you fine folks. And thank you very much for having me.
Amazing panel. I am honored as well.
Yeah, everybody here is really super awesome and smart and stuff. It's great. I love it.
Really smart, like really, really smart. Like all genius, like really smart, right?
It's like totally smart with brains and everything.
Yeah.
Like pretty smart.
I'm smart. I'm really smart.
I promise.
I saw where Donald said he had to step away. He had something with his child. He had something he promised his child he'd worked on with, was going to work on with Shakespeare. So he had to take care of that. So he apologized for stepping away.
Did you see that one of my tweets actually made the news on Donald's? What was he talking about? He had taken credit for claiming that since he's been in office, no American lives have been lost on an aircraft. And I had actually tweeted something in response to that, a retort, and a little news organization picked it up and disseminated it out. So I actually made the news on Twitter thing. I don't know whether I said, but it was funny.
That's 2 of us, man. High five. Yes. Except mine wasn't on Donald Trump.
We're gonna be famous.
So we're totally famous, like linked to our tweet.
we gotta get Mel 1,000 subs. I mean, she's criminally undersubbed. And I gotta get like 10,000. That's my goal this year. Well, at least 5. I'm already clean close to 5. I need to get 10. And Bill, we need to get Bill subs too. And PZ, you just started a channel too. Yeah. He's now officially a YouTuber.
Ah, PZ's a YouTuber. Yay. Yeah. He's petting his cat like Dr. Evil.
An actual channel that he has. Yeah.
He's been petting his cat like Dr. Evil. So
which of us
he's been sitting
evil?
here just like petting his cat, linear lines like that.
Dr. Ernst Stavros Blofeld. He's the guy with the cat.
Yeah. She's an evil cat.
His was white.
It's okay. Aren't you?
It works out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This has been a fun talk. It's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And no technical
I thought it was interesting. Jackson, are we meeting your expectations?
I'm sorry. Say that again, RJ.
Are we meeting your expectations for how you hope this would turn out?
Oh, I thought this was fabulous. I thought it was really great. I enjoyed seeing all these people in one place, all these cool science
he didn't
people.
inject anybody, so I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Not yet. Asai, you better watch out. I've been watching you this whole time.
There's further puns, I promise.
Now, Jackson, I think we deserve a reward next time. So if you think we're fabulous next time, you need to have a handful of glitter and toss it up in the air and go like, "You're fabulous." It's been great. It's like, this is a fabulous talk.
You got 200 subs. We got to change that. That's going to be a goal of mine. We've got to get you up there. Your channel's criminally undersubbed as well.
I actually tomorrow those subs might drop to 2 people, as in Paul and Shannon, with the next video I release. So we'll see about that.
Oh, Oh, I know what your next video is going to be on.
Okay.
I'm not saying a word. I do know what it's on, though.
I'll be
I
waiting
don't
for
know why
that.
you're doing this, but I do know what it's on.
I'm doing it because it was a request, so we're gonna see how. This is the first. Well,
What could go wrong?
I say this is the first. This is the first request someone's put like in another video. I've gotten a few requests for like hominin evolution was one I did that I got a few requests for, and some people were like, "Can you talk about the idea of kinds?" Which I've kind of touched on here and there in different videos, and then I devoted one that was kind of to that, but pretty much anything you do on kinds, they just
requests are.
Do what?
People request they don't do videos. I said, do you want to know what my video requests are? The people that request for me, they request I don't do any more videos. They've seen my math videos. They're like, Steve, don't do the math.
That's harsh.
I have a list of stuff. The Olympics, social media, nuclear energy, human sexuality, hormones, adultery, narcissism, trolls, nanotech, Mars and space travel, human psychology and evolution, junk food, addiction. I can't read my own writing on this one, so that's a problem. Also, inflationary universe. So I have a list of like requests.
I want to do. I work with one on like nuclear power. I know a little bit about that, obviously.
Yeah. What is this? Mod and eco science. I can't read my own handwriting. I wrote too fast.
I have all mine on a Google Doc, all my video potentials, which I'm slowly getting through, but then I'll be in class or something and I'll think about it and I'm like, I ought to make a video about that topic just to sort it all out. And then that's another one I got to add to the list.
Well, I usually do a poll. So I didn't do a poll this last Saturday because it was a chat with PZ. And so that one was awesome, except for my technical difficulties. That's the first time I did Skype through OBS. So give me some credit, man. So PZ broke that barrier for me on Skype.
Did you watch the hangout that we had with Dr. Kevin Hankey and Dr. Gary Lachelt?
Not yet. Okay. Not yet.
Watch. It was good. I mean, and we got another one on the 19th because Dr. Lachelt's going to come in and do a presentation.
We really need, like you said, a brief explanation of that, like a paragraph to summarize it somehow, because there was so much information there and it was very good.
We did
no creationist is going to sit and listen to that. We need to have
we did an after show. We did do more of a brief overview of it.
The
problem is, like you said, it's such an in-depth field, and I take the hit that I was going to write a little bit more blurb about trying to explain it a little more simplistically, but I was so anxious to get to Dr. Hankey's presentation and so fascinated by it because I've seen both their presentations already. And I was kind of figuring that afterwards we'd kind of like break it back down and take it down to more basal level. But then as I was reading the live chat, I'm realizing that, some people didn't even know what the helium was. I mean, why it had to do with alpha particles and like that. So I take the hit for that. Next hangout, which will be on the 19th, I think that I'll start off and I'll put a very basal understanding of what the actual claim is and why this is an issue. Because when creationists bring up the helium diffusion rates, most of them, probably all of them, have never actually read any of the papers. They've never actually looked into any of them. They're just parodying what they've seen.
That's true for like 99% of articles, as RJ well knows.
I mean, it's just dealing with the general population.
Do not cite
that. They don't know. They don't understand the science. I mean, they just don't know. And when they're sitting there and trying to read a paper and they have to look up like 80% of the terminology, they just kind of check out and they quit.
Subject. I mean, I did a PowerPoint presentation on polonium halos, and they actually both looked at it and actually thought it was pretty decent. And that made me feel really good. I mean, these are two, PhDs, one's in nuclear physics, and he thought I did a decent job. And this was even more difficult than that. So I was like way out of my depths. And I said, I need to get big guns on this. That's why I reached out to them. And they were more than willing to come in and do it because they've never had a platform to really get their side out other than talk origin. So
that's great.
Right. That's nice that worked out so well. I hope the general population's able to digest it if there's like some kind of other.
It hasn't got many views yet. I'm actually quite surprised. I mean, I still think it's going to be the definitive seminal piece on helium diffusion rates, because where else are you going to have two leading experts in this at the same time talking about that? So
and then you do run into the fact that a lot.
Can you put a link to that?
I'll find it here in a few.
Okay.
like the
Yeah.
most recent video on his channel.
Yeah. Well, the second. Yeah, actually, well, I had the after show, but yeah.
Yeah.
I just find when you're dealing with the general population and they don't know how to read a paper, let alone the terminology in it, they're going to check out like really early. At least that's been my experience. I've had to work with people to where they're just, they're like, I don't understand this. And so then, since I already have a background a little bit in teaching, I'm able to kind of take that and explain it in terms they understand. So if it's like heavy science, if you're already dealing with somebody who's not really gonna, see that perspective anyway, and it's stuff that they have to work really hard to understand, they tend to check out pretty early on.
Well, they see
That's been my
math, and
experience.
it's like, okay, I'm done.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I mean, and the next one's worse because we're not going to get into it, but the next one actually gets into some things like Laplace transforms and second partial differential equations. So it's not like we're dealing with like first grade math here. And so I've seen the presentation going, I told him, I said, you can show this, but I wouldn't get into it because you're just going to lose everybody.
See, and it's like, I never took Calc 3, but I had to take an undergrad and a graduate level physical chemistry class, and it was all about thermodynamics. But when he got into partial differentials, I'm like, I never had that math before. I could explain it to you what all of the variables meant, but I didn't know how to apply it because I didn't have the skill to do that because I never had calculus 3. But I understand how it works and interchanges and all, and I'm pretty certain I could apply it in a laboratory setting as long as I was able to find somebody, or at least an online calculator. But it's tough, and I'm not an unintelligent person, but I just didn't have, and he didn't expect us to do a lot of the harder calculus 3 problems because nobody in the class had calculus 3. So we're like,
I want to get a heads up. What we're going to be talking about is diffusion rates, and specifically relating to what's called Flick's second law. And Flick's second law is a second order partial differential equation, and it is not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. And so I don't check out when I see math, but I sit there and go, I don't know how to implement that, but I understand what the variables mean, and I know what this is. And when you're talking about the equivalencies between the Maxwell equivalencies, you know what I mean? When you have like constant pressure here and constant temperature here in regards to the ideal gas law, I took a year of that. So we had
to do quantitative and you were talking about quantitative analysis earlier, but I had to take quantitative and qualitative analysis.
Yes.
So you'd have to see, okay, if you change one thing, how do other things change in the formula? Boyle's law, or Charles' law, or Bernoulli's equation.
Exactly.
And so that was a big thing in nuke school, is learning how to identify what variables are changing, holding what.
Right. And I can do that. But if you want me to work out the partial differentials, I'm just like, I haven't done enough of it.
It's not that hard, right? I mean, you're just basically you're holding certain
one at a constant,
and then you're derivating with
the others
maybe. So conceptually, it's not that difficult, but trying to do it,
right? Yeah. I mean, conceptually, I totally get it. So in order to get through that class, I wrote out, this is how I would try to work through this problem. This is what the variables mean. I understand in a laboratory setting, this is where we're taking this particular variable at a constant. And these two are going this one go up, this one goes down.
And this is the part of the program where we're nerding out.
But yes, I totally get that. But man, if you expect me to write out everything on step by step, how to work that out, I'm gonna have a little cry in the corner.
I took calculus 2 last semester. I just started physics, so the physics will be this semester. Fun times, because calculus 1 was but the teacher wasn't that great. Calculus 2 was hard, but I liked the teacher, and so it was better.
See, I didn't care about physics until the second semester. The first semester was how many forces on a pulley. I'm like, I really don't care. Second semester was 2 electrons are moving in a field. I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Let's talk about the electrons and magnetism.
And Jackson, I put in the group chat that formula right there that I put in there. I had a 4-hour final review by 2 nuclear engineers on that formula that I had to understand to pass everything.
Speaking of long chats, it's true, you did an 8-hour chat with Mr. ID.
Oh my Lord.
He didn't. We had. Did you see? We had Aaron talk to him.
Even 10 minutes with
I don't
Edgar
know
is an ordeal.
Let's put it this
8
way.
hours?
Mr. ID was so bad that even Ken Hovind left in the middle of it because he was like, "This is too crazy even for me."
He was confusing Hogan, and they're on the same page.
Yeah. No, he left, and Mr. IT was literally thinking, "Oh, we must be having computer connection problems." I've talked to Ken's secretary; he was not having computer problems. He outright left. He was too crazy even for him.
He was like, "I'm done."
Edgar comes in on my video once in a while, and I have to say, "Why are you doing this, Edgar? You are contributing nothing."
I brought Mr. ID to the community. I actually reached out to him a year or two ago, whatever it was, and it's been many lulls since then. But yeah, wow.
8 hours though. Are you a masochist? Do you?
I don't have long hangouts any longer. I'm like 3 hours most.
Mental torment. What's that about?
Didn't you notice that he was saying the same thing over and over again over like the first hour, long before you get to 8?
He is just so woefully confused on everything. I mean, so confused.
Why spend 8 hours?
Paper towels down, though.
Yeah, his egg experiment.
See, I don't understand
That's
the 8
it.
hours thing. I would have been done like maybe 30 minutes. I'd be like, you just repeated yourself.
I mean, it's like hitting your head with a ball peen hammer. You know, the first 10 minutes is more than enough.
We had the talk with Aaron. So Mr. ID puts up his books, and Aaron goes. He gets up and like does something else and comes back and then like just tears it all apart.
Yeah, Aaron had no idea what the hell was going on with Mr. ID. I mean,
he's like, "What did you guys get me into?"
Well, actually, Aaron's getting into flat Earth lately, trying to just debunk flat Earthers. And we all feel like, dude, you don't know the depths of that rabbit hole.
We all feel bad for putting Aaron through that. We all feel bad for it. It was.
I think he needs to avoid that at all cost.
I wasn't a part of that, so I kind of feel like I dodged a bullet there.
Well, he had asked me to find a flat Earther for him, and I was going to get Anthony Riley, but I guess Aaron had some other person he had found, and that was a total train wreck. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, you got to hand it to Edgar, though. His bleary-eyed enthusiasm is positively sweet. I mean, he's a sweet.
He's a nice guy. No, he's a nice guy. I like personally. Edgar's a nice guy, but I just never seen anybody so conceptually confused on so many different levels and so many different disciplines of science. I mean, in everything, he's just
Well, he has no data. There's nothing in his head. Whenever you try to engage on any specifics, it's like Gertrude Stein's comment about Oakland. There is no there.
He doesn't even understand gravity. He thinks gravity's a pushing force.
He's kind of a flat earther geocentrist. I mean, he was beyond even Kent Hovind, because he was indicating that when he was in his discussion
at
with
some point in time,
Hogan.
I don't know. At some point in time, I feel my time is valuable, and after about 30 minutes of nonsense, I would be like, there's not enough drugs or booze to handle that level of nonsense to where it would be entertaining or worth my time.
Mel, explain this to me. Explain this to me then. Why is it that my hangouts where I have like Mr. ID or I have a flat earther on or something like Hovind, they'll get 10, 20, 30,000 views. But my hangout with Dr. Hankey and Dr. Lachelt, it's only at like 500 now.
Because it's like Rome with the gladiators watching just like a train wreck.
It's a shame, though. I mean,
you can't look away.
My goodness, but I mean, that hangout that I had the other day was, I think, one of the best I've ever had, next to the Mary Schweitzer video.
Yeah, well, that's what awesome. I'm saying. You have to remember that the American culture is surrounded around fascination with the complete and utter insane and nonsensical. Look what we have in office right now. So it's just
I don't care, like Bill Ludlow's hangout. That video was shared everywhere. I mean, that video went around the world. It almost was a viral thing. I mean, that's how Bill, superstar status. But nobody shared this one on helium diffusion rates because I guess it was just probably beyond their level. But they didn't realize how much information was in that presentation.
Okay, so my most popular videos, cannabis, flat earth, okay? Where are we going with this? Cannabis, flat earth, and okay, let me think, and pseudoscience. So anything that's nonsensical, or something that is a buzzword, or something that's
Let's become flat earthers. Is that your end game here?
No, what I'm saying is I talked about the science behind why flat earthers think the way that they do. So essentially, that's what I did. I talked about the history of flat earthers, where they came from, the Whitman experiment, where he fell for that. One of the fathers of modern biology fell for the flat earther nonsense. And they ended up like, well, we don't believe your experiment anyway. It was a bet. And so I talk about that. And then I talk about, what could be the issues associated with the flat earthers. So, I mean, but those are my most popular videos, are that and cannabis.
Look at your chat, PZ.
My chat.
Yes, the chat on the side, the group chat. But yeah, okay. I don't understand it either, Mel. You see it at the bottom. Nestling sent you a tweet on Twitter. He made a picture, or he made a chart showing phylogenies over geologic time. He wants you to take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, but yeah, my most viewed video, which is at 10,000 views now, is Arnra versus Mr. ID. And I get messages like every 3 or 4 days where someone new watches it and says, why did this ever happen? And we're like, we don't know.
Yeah, don't blame me for the Mr. ID thing. Like I said, I'm still getting a lot of flack for that.
Me too.
Commenting those videos that have Mr. ID, and it's just like, okay, I thought he was interested to engage with it first because it was new, right? I'm like, here's something new, intelligent design. Let's debunk this stuff. And then I didn't realize until later how out there he really was. I mean, his science books, I can't even call them books. I guess can't.
Yeah.
They're an extended tweet.
But also, my second most viewed video is actually the one I made on the reptile mammal transition. It was just at, like, last time I checked, 1.5 thousand views.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Of all the videos I've made, why that one?
It's weird. I don't know how. I don't know how it works. Some videos just do better than others. I couldn't tell you the algorithm anymore.
Mammal transition gotten a play that it needs to be.
And I will agree that people seem attracted to the stupid.
Yes, they do. They're attracted to that.
But I agree with like Jay and Light Chat. I can't deal with flat earthers any longer. I'm kind of avoiding it in 2018. I've just had my fill with it, and I'm like, okay, I played with them enough. I really want very little to do with them. I'll leave it to Greg's Rhetoric and Sean Hufford and those guys who do a great job on it. SciStrike. I can't do it any longer. These guys are just killing my brain cells.
I rarely get any flat earth trolls anymore because I just don't engage so often. Anti-vaxxers, I get them rarely. I used to get anti-vaxxers all the time, and I'm like, oh my god.
I actually made a video about in part about anti-vaxxers, and I have not heard a peep. I mean, I might just be too low on the subscribers, like
on the radar. Yeah,
no one's really seeing it, so they're not saying anything yet.
See, I talked about the science of immunization and all the different type of immunizations you can get and how it works and all of the different compounds that are associated with it. And and it's just. But anytime I get a troll, it's like, watch my YouTube video. I'm like, watch mine first.
Yeah, no, I can't stand it. When I'm having an engagement with somebody and then they just pop me a video and say, "Hey, watch this video," it's pretty well I'm done.
Yeah,
I don't SciStrike. What was the viewership on the one you did on that Robert Kennedy anti-vaxxer one?
I don't recall. I was about to mention that along with the conversation about people being attracted to the stupid. Oddly enough, my most viewed video is, and this is embarrassing because we've all done some good work since then, an ice wall of stupid. That's the title. Holding at 29,500 views.
It's not like flat Earth ice wall.
Yeah. That's
yeah. You know what's worse? Did you watch the other day? I actually had Leonard Kirtnall. I mean, a world record holder. I mean, the guy's an astronomer. He's a mathematician. He's a computer scientist. Very renowned expert on a lot of different things. He called me from the South Pole on an Iridium cell phone, right? Sat phone. Call me standing on the South Pole telling me there's no ice wall and that there's no edge there, and it's got like, I don't know, like 600 views so far. That phone call cost $100.
No.
And it's got like 600 views. And you have a video about ice wall and you get 30,000. I'm telling you, I'm doing something seriously wrong here.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, H.L. Mencken said that nobody ever lost a dime underestimating the intelligence of the American public, and I think that's globally true and certainly still true.
And this is why
God,
we all
it makes me nuts because I spend a lot of time investigating, and I even have a separate website where I post my slides with my sources, and anybody can download all the slides I use on my shows in addition to all of and I have the links there for all of the studies that I talk about. And it's like, I spend so much time on this stuff, and I'm the only person really that's doing that. And then I'll go and people are like, why don't you have more viewers? I'm like, because people like to stay stupid. And so it's
like 20
it's
viewers.
Well, they don't
work.
see it.
And Jackson
It's
has like
work to
20,
learn.
but I tell you what, you get like, and I hate to say this because it's not going to happen. Please don't. But I mean, you get like G-Man in here, 130 people watching. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Because it's like, it's the train wreck that people can't seem to look away, but they're drawn to. And so if I was more snarky and if I was more rude and I came out and I was just like, oh my God, did you just say that?
Wait, I've seen you snarky. You could be snarky. You do snarky.
I can be snarky. And as they say in the South, it takes the Lord holding me back right now. Sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm letting
Well,
Jesus.
maybe we
Jesus
have too much
is taking the
integrity to
wheel.
be Alex Jones.
So it's just one of those things where I want to be approachable to the people that would find what I talk about offensive, but at the same time, it's but that's not necessarily what draws the crowds. But if I were snarky and if I were rude to every person that says a dumb thing to me on Twitter, which is a lot, but I try to be like objective about it and go like, why would you think that?
You should see what they say to Bill. Oh my God, I'm telling you, Bill has like, he's got the cycles of cycles.
Tell us about it, Bill.
Exaggerating.
If Bill was like all snarky, or if I was just like going full on with being rude to everybody who disagreed with me, then I lose the crowd that I'm trying to get to.
Right.
I gotta say, we see a very mild PZ. I gotta call PZ out. We see a very mild PZ. I have seen you be snarky.
Oh no!
Sure,
never.
Please.
PZ's the Mr. Rogers of science. Come on.
Yeah, that's it.
I want to see this if I can actually get it out there, because I sent something to PZ a long time ago on his Twitter DM. He doesn't check them, I don't think, but I want to say that PZ has always been very good to my channel. He's always been awesome when he comes in, and I speak very highly of him because of that. I love listening to what he has to say. I really hope that his channel becomes huge. I don't know any reason why it shouldn't. So. I want to thank him.
I mean, I just have to get over this bit about being really boring, and then maybe you'll get. Maybe
put up the G-Man for like 30 minutes.
I love PZ. When I was younger, when I was first getting into atheism and science, internet stuff, the things I used to watch that really got me interested in a whole lot of it was the videos you did at Skepticon. The stuff like a few things I've learned about creationists, like the one you did about the Robertsonian fusion between the chromosomes. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
We addressed that one. We're still trying to get Tompkins for that. Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins. We still want him to come in and talk about his.
He is such a fraud.
Yeah, I want to watch that.
God, his stuff is just absurd. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But yeah,
did you watch PZ and Dr. Fuzzrana? Did you watch that debate, Jackson? Because that's really good. Because I haven't liked Fuzz. I mean, Fuzz.
No, I have not seen. Yeah. I haven't watched.
It was I think the Regency or Ria. Where's that?
Where did you guys have that debate?
What hotel was it?
What?
PZ, where did you have the debate with Fuzzrana?
Oh, that was up in Fargo. Yeah, I don't remember the name of the hotel.
That was a pretty good discussion.
Yeah, all I remember is that
Dakotas.
Yeah, I got invited to go give that talk, and it was incredibly annoying because They said, "Oh yeah, just go get a room down at the Motel 6 down the road or something." And meanwhile, they put up Rana in this fabulous suite.
Oh,
You know, it was so obvious. I was just there to.
you were the odd man out on that one, huh?
Yeah. And there was
like
no.
I said, I don't understand a lot of things Rana talks about when he's talking about there's ensoulment. He thinks that for some reason, at a certain point in human phylogenetics, that it just God put the soul into somebody and that became Adam and Eve. And I don't know how they actually come up with that model.
Oh, it's easy. I approach him from the scholarly methods direction, and I know that when analyzed his thing he did on, he's done a couple postings on punctuated equilibrium, and I even called it to his attention, and he's never responded on it because he's just completely clueless. He doesn't understand the content of the sources he cited, so he's a crash and burn style, and none of them have ever dealt with the reptile-mammal transition anywhere at RTB.
I always find it interesting when people send me papers and like, this proves my point. I'm like, you didn't actually read it, did you? Because it just stated everything that and just reinforces what I just told you. You didn't read the paper. Do you know what you just sent me?
I've got a word that supports her position. And thank you all for making me sad, by the way. Because with the question of most viewed videos and that sort of thing, I went looking while we were chatting. And a very short video of me having a conversation with John Mather. Yeah, that one. The Nobel Prize John Mather. Webb Telescope John Mather has 163 views.
Wow.
Because people don't, they're just, look at Cosmos. Okay, the TV show Cosmos that came back, Seth MacFarlane put his own money into that series. And I love the man for that. And I use those, I use that series in my classroom as a teacher. It's interesting. I have a side story about that. But Cosmos, Seth MacFarlane felt that it was important that we incorporate some kind of educational film or TV show around prime time. And it's beautifully made. The orchestration, the music, everything is absolutely its own work of art. It's a true, revamped testament to Carl Sagan's original series. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a wonderful science communicator. It's a gorgeous series, and it explains things so simplistically, but it wasn't renewed.
Yeah.
Because
but
people...
You didn't hear the latest news. Tyson just announced it's coming back in 2019.
Are they really?
That's announced today, I think. Yeah.
I am pleased.
I'm so excited. Oh, that's
Some things are
fantastic.
just like,
You just make my night.
somewhere picked up the tab to keep the Arecibo telescope from being dismantled down in Puerto Rico. So there are people out there who have a vision for things, and they help.
It's wonderful, and I just love it. But interesting thing about Cosmos, it goes parallel a lot with Wonders of Life. If you've not seen that series by Professor Brian Cox. He's my favorite astrophysicist, by the way. And oftentimes I've considered when I go to London next, just take a train to Manchester and crash one of his physics lectures if he's there. I'll probably, if I go to jail, in London, it'll be because I crashed a Professor Brian Cox physics lecture at Manchester University. So that might actually make the news at some point in time. But it's funny, because anytime in my classroom, I would give the option, because I showed both, and both cover the same content, but they're both delivered in completely different ways. Cosmos is very American, and it's like sci-fi looking, special effects, all in your face with this cool music. And Wonders of Life is like a British man in the woods talking about science with a really nice voice, and he's kind of cute. And so anytime I would offer the option between the two, the guys would be like, I kind of want to watch Cosmos. And the girls are like, I really kind of want to watch Wonders of Life, but I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. And I'm like, I understand. Let's watch Professor Brian.
He was a very pretty man. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I got to be on a panel with Brian Cox once. It was very nice. It was me, Brian Cox, and of all things, Alan Moore.
Oh, wow. I'm jealous now, PZ, because I crush on him a little bit. I fangirl a little bit.
Uh-huh.
A little bit. I read his book, E = MC² and Why We Should Care.
Yeah.
beautiful book about the derivation of the energy equation. I'm not a physicsy type of brain, but if I had him as an instructor, I think I would capture that knowledge a lot better. It's an exquisite book that's simplistically explains.
A very interesting derivation.
Do what?
How they actually, got to still down to equals MC squared is it was a very cool.
Yes.
How they got to it actually was amazing. Actually,
it's amazing,
it's it's actually a bigger equation. It's a very simplified version.
Yes, it's beautiful, and so that was the last book I read. Actually, I'm currently reading Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, but it's like that was I don't read fiction anymore. I read stuff like that, and I'm like, oh my god, this is.
I'm gonna be trying to get Leonard Susskind here soon. If you know who he is, Leonard Susskind is. Yeah, Landon Curtinall is a good friend of his, and he told me to go ahead and drop.
Man, Steve, if you ever get to talk with Professor Brian, man.
You never know. I have got so many people lined up, and we've got so many awesome
or PZ, man, do a girl
Actually,
solid.
My goal is to get Joe Rogan in. I'm telling you, if I get Joe Rogan, I made it. But yeah,
I'll skip that one.
Oh man, he's an interesting character. I'll give him that. I
don't agree with him on a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, but he is a character.
I mean, he did like a bit where crap. Well, he's like his kid. He's got like a young kid, and so. His kid's like, Dad, how does this work? And he's like, explains the physics of it and all this, and he's like, all right, that's how this works. And the kid says, oh well, how about this? And he explains how this other thing works. He says, Dad, how does Santa get down the chimney? And he says, Christmas magic, go to sleep.
Yeah, for real though. If one of you guys get like Professor Brian on your channel, you better call me, or I'm going to be mad at you forever.
Mel, I hope you got my slam dunk on your future reading list.
Okay. I it's like I really miss reading fiction. I really do. It's like I've been in a perpetual state of reading nonfiction for like the past 9 years.
If you need fiction, get my Phileas Fogg novel. That's a secular science fiction mystery thing. It's and history too. I think you'd like it.
I probably would. It's just
well, we have been going a whole lot longer than I thought we would originally. We're over 2 hours now.
It's your fault, Jackson.
Yeah, actually, well, I've just had so many interesting people with interesting things to say, and so that's
why it's your fault.
I just can't stop listening to all of you guys talking about different ideas and whatnot. But it's now past 6 where I am, so we're getting pretty hungry. We gotta eat some food.
I have to go feed my wife. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say thank you everyone for coming on today. We lost Donald. He left. He had to go tend his family, and so but everybody else who stayed, thank you for staying, and to all of my audience who stayed through the whole thing, thank you for coming. I had a great time with everybody.
This is great.
So maybe we can do this again sometime in the future.
Well, yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
It's great being on your shows, Jackson.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Well, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.